What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. We're going to talk about the housing market in this video. I've been getting a lot of questions about whether or not I should sell my house in this housing market, or should I hold on to this house? Should I hold on to my house and wait for additional appreciation on the home because you think that the housing market may not actually crash like many people are predicting? Many economists are expecting a massive housing crash. A lot of people are looking to buy a house too. So the question is, do I buy a house now or wait for the housing market to cool off? Do you sell your house now or wait for the housing market to continue to go up and sell for more? So we're gonna cover a couple of key points that I think that people should keep in mind when you're considering either of these options. So first and foremost, let's look at what's going on right now, right? So we're in 2022, and we've seen so much housing appreciation just about across the spectrum, more than we've ever seen, even more than what we've probably seen in 2007, 2008. Well, 2008 was about where the beginning of the last housing market crash began, but the amount of appreciation that was seen up to that point was probably the most appreciation we've ever seen in the housing market. But today, here in 2022, we're seeing record levels of appreciation. It's just unbelievable. Now, the sad part is if you're not a homeowner, you aren't a part of the asset inflation. Because honestly, whether you call it appreciation of the real estate or appreciation of the asset, this is asset inflation. And if you didn't own real estate, if you didn't have a ton of real estate investment trusts, also known as REITs, which is something you can just purchase on the stock market just like a stock, then you missed the boat. You missed out on one of the most tremendous periods of appreciation for real estate in history. But the question is the party over? Is the music about to stop? And will you have a seat once the music does stop? No, I'm just kidding. You know, there's not musical chairs, but seriously, there's a lot of people who are looking to buy a house right now or sell their house, and they're like, I don't know what to do. Real estate agents will give you a variety of expectations or predictions, but what is it really going to be? You know, are we going up or are we going down? So first and foremost, let's look at it like this. Okay, obviously there is some limitation to how much people can afford to buy. So there's a function of how much can people afford to buy that we have to consider. There's also, even beyond the function, because it's a multi-dynamic conversation. On the one hand, there's only so much that people can afford to buy, you know, and so the bank will say, hey, your income is X, the property you're looking at purchasing is X. We see that you're capable of putting down X number of dollars. Based on that, based on the interest rate, your mortgage payment per month will put you outside of your debt to income ratio that we're willing to approve you for a mortgage on. So basically, between the price of the house, your interest rate, the amount that you're able to put down, and your income, your monthly income, the bank is going to say, hey, we can approve you for X number of dollars. So we will reach a point where more and more buyers won't qualify for homes as prices continue to go up. But even if prices don't go up, if the interest rates go up, the interest rate itself can price new buyers out of the market. So I think we're definitely going to want to pay attention to, you know, we're going to have to pay attention to a number of different facets. So if I'm a seller, I want to pay attention to houses that are hitting the market and how long they're sitting, right? Because that's going to give you an indication of how strong the housing market is. How quickly are offers getting put in? Are you going to realtor.com or zillow.com and you're seeing houses hitting the market, and it shows pending or contingent or under contract in less than a week? To me, if I'm seeing tons of houses hitting the market and they're under contract in a week, that market's strong. Now, on the other hand, if you start seeing houses starting to sit longer and longer and longer, that is increasing the number of days on the market. Then the housing market may be slowing down. So you want to prepare for both scenarios, and ideally, you want to prepare yourself to decide in advance what are you going to do in either scenario. And I think it's really smart to prepare a plan beforehand. That way you can simply execute the plan that you've already prepared in the event that either scenario happens. So say to yourself, okay, if I'm going to buy a house, right? What I would do, and this is not investment advice, but if I were to buy or sell a house in this housing market right now, I would be strongly preparing myself to make a decision ahead of time. What am I going to do in either of these circumstances, right? If housing prices continue to go up, this is what I'm going to do. If housing prices continue to go down, this is what I'm going to do. Excuse me. If housing prices go up, this is what I'm going to do. If housing prices taper off, this is what I'm going to do. If housing prices decide to, pull back a little bit, that might be what I do. So whether I'm a buyer or a seller, you need to have a plan. You need to have some type of pre-structured plan that you can, execute in the event that either scenario happens. So what I'd be looking for is, whether I'm a buyer or a seller of real estate in this climate, I'm paying very close attention to how quickly these houses are going under contract. Now, if I'm a buyer, and houses are hitting the market and they're getting zapped up, they're getting, under contract in less than a week, then as a buyer, I know that I'm not going to be able to come in and lowball any offers. That's just not going to happen. Not right now. And of course, if I'm a seller, if the market stays hot, then there's reason to believe that the real estate values could continue to go up. So maybe hold off on the sale of your house. Who knows, right? But again, there's always this delicate balance. Now, here's another dynamic. People, there's the human dynamic behind this thing, right? Beyond the economical factors of can you get qualified for a mortgage, some people, and more probably, depends on what camp you fall in, but hear me out, right? One camp of people is probably going to say, hey, I need to hurry up and buy before these prices continue to go up, right? So that's one camp of people, the fear of missing out. But then there's the other camp of people who are like, man, I don't want to pay these prices. And then you look up the history of these houses and you're like, yo, this person wants $500,000 today, and that same house was valued at, say, $400,000 10 months ago, right? So there's the emotional factor behind these prices. Even if that person could possibly be qualified to purchase the home, like the bank would be willing to purchase or extend them a mortgage to purchase the home, psychologically, that buyer might just be mentally priced out of the market. Like, I don't want to keep chasing this thing, right? So you have those dynamics there that buyers will be considering. And if there's enough buyers that eventually get to a point where either they can't afford to get approved for the new mortgage or at the new interest rates at the current prices or future prices, obviously that's taking some buyers out the market. If more and more buyers start to say, hey, I'm not willing to chase these prices anymore, I'll just sit the market out. That's another factor to consider, because that can and will happen. Question is, how many of those people will fall into those categories, and will it be enough of them to slow down the rate of sales of home sales? So those are some things to consider. So unless those factors start revealing themselves, there's going to be more of the same. There would have to be some kind of deviation in terms of what we've been seeing in the real estate market in order to see housing prices slow down in terms of going up. the rate of appreciation. We'd have to see something change before that happens. Now, Federal Reserve is scheduled to, or not scheduled, but they're saying that we should see another 6 or 7 rate hikes this year. That has yet to materialize, but Jerome Powell, Fed Reserve Jerome Powell, he did raise interest rates about a couple weeks back. Right now, I'm seeing 30-year mortgages sitting anywhere between 4.3 and 5%. So 4.3% all the way on up to 5%, and these are for prime grade A, no points added to these mortgage payments loans. So it's going to be really interesting because the Fed hasn't really been raising interest rates, and we're already seeing this much of a jump. We bought real estate maybe 8 or 9 months ago now, and we got a rate of like 2.8%. So for a 30-year fixed rate mortgage with no points being paid down on that mortgage. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens in the coming months. But let's get back to some additional factors that you might want to consider if you're looking to buy a house or sell a house in this market. Now, beyond the financial aspects of the buyer, let's talk about some of the sellers, right? So back in 2020, there were, obviously they shut down the country. Many people couldn't work. Thankfully, there are a lot more people capable of working remotely than people were capable of, say, back in 2008, just because the technology is here to support it. You got Zoom, you got, WebEx, you got all these different remote work tools that allow you to host meetings, work remotely, and so that technology is there. Bandwidth is much faster and stronger today than it was 12 years ago, 14 years ago, back in 2008. So the climate is different, but there was a massive wave of foreclosures back in 2008 through 2011-ish. And so a lot of people are like, there's going to be another big crash. Well, I wonder if the government would even let another big crash happen. But here's some food for thought. The stimulus for, the CARES Act stimulus package back in 2020 included mortgage forbearance for homeowners. Government said, hey, we're not going to let this housing market crash and implode like it did last time. No. So the question is, will the Fed and the government even allow more a housing market to crash, right? You're talking about printing money, Federal Reserve print money. They bought assets and securities going into this pandemic to prevent a massive stock market crash, and they sure enough prevented it. Now you can argue what additional factors may have prevented this stock market from crashing, but it didn't crash to the extent that it could have. And we witnessed one of the biggest bull markets in history, and so much wealth was created during that time frame. So would the Fed and would the federal government prevent a housing market crash? I'm willing to bet that they don't want to see a housing market crash any more than they want to see a recession. So I would expect some intervention there. But let's go back to 2020 for a second, right? So there's been a lot more and more talk about potential foreclosures coming up. And the reason why is a lot of people took these forbearance deals that the federal government was offering, which allowed people to skip mortgage payments for an extended period of time. Don't quote me on the period of time that people were able to skip out on mortgages, but it was anywhere from, and that was the other thing, you could exit forbearance whenever you needed to. So for example, you could have taken forbearance, now you don't have to make a mortgage payment. This prevented foreclosure of your home, and maybe you did forbearance for 1 month. Maybe you did forbearance for 24 months. I don't know. Everybody did a variable amount of time. But there was some limitation to how long you could be in forbearance. The point is this: a lot of the forbearances are expected to be expiring as of today and going forward over the next several months. So many people are saying that, or excuse me, many economists are saying that people coming out of forbearance may not be able to afford the payments once they're responsible for making mortgage payments going forward. So that remains to be seen. But let's just say hypothetically, some percentage of those people are not able to. My neighbors are making some noise over there. They're having some fun. I think they're doing a small party. But so let's just say for every 100 people who come off the forbearance plan, let's just say, I don't know, 40% of people are not able to afford their mortgages, right? And I think that's very high. I don't think it's anywhere near that. I think a lot of people were capable of continuing to pay the mortgage, but they realized that, hey, the government's going to let me skip out on payments. I'm going to just stack cash and, boost my savings rate during that time frame. Some people took those mortgage payments and threw them into the stock market and came up that way. So, that's a great way to generate some passive income, because we saw one of the greatest stock market booms in history. But not everyone who's in forbearance can't afford their house. So you have to factor that in. Personally, I think 40% of people who are in forbearance not being able to afford their homes when they're responsible for making mortgage payments again, I honestly think that's very high. But even if it is 40%, right? Let's just say 40% of those houses hit the market, and they're not all going to hit the market at one time. So even if they started foreclosing on the 40%, right? These are the same banks that were in business, many of them, back in 2008. They got burned back then, losing money listing all these foreclosed houses on the market. They flooded the market, and there was excess inventory of houses on the market back in 2008, which really drove down the prices of houses. We don't have an excess of inventory today in the real estate market. We have a shortage of inventory in the real estate market today. So it would take quite an influx of new inventory hitting the real estate market to have an excess of real estate inventory. Now, since banks got burned in 2008 from all the foreclosures and them not being able to sell the properties for as much as they could have, and not being able to collect from the homeowners or the previous homeowners who were foreclosed on, the banks lost a lot of money. They lost billions and billions of dollars. So it got to a point back then where they decided, hey, we're not going to release all these homes onto the market. We're going to keep this inventory back, and it became known as shadow inventory. So basically the banks just didn't put them on the market, because they realized that if they keep listing all these foreclosed houses on the market, they're further driving the price of the houses down, because there were more houses on the market for sale than there were buyers, and the price just kept going down and down and down. So the banks don't want to lose money like that again. So I would expect that these banks, they're not stupid. They're in business to make money. Even if they had a massive wave of foreclosures, number one, there's so many buyers on the market right now that a foreclosed house won't be a deal. It used to be back in the day, it's a foreclosure, you're getting 100, 200 grand off. No. You put a foreclosed house on the market, first of all, these banks are smarter now. They're going to have better pictures for their houses. They're going to list the house and make it look like a quality listing, and they're going to get the maximum out of the house that they can. So you list the house on the market, and as strong as the housing market is today, that foreclosure will sell for as much as any other house. So it won't be a deal, and it in and of itself is not going to drive the value of real estate down. It's just going to be another sale. The thing that would change that would be if there were so many real estate or homes listed on the market to a point where it overwhelmed the demand to buy homes, and then eventually the prices, in order to get the homes to sell, they had to reduce the prices. And then of course, if there's a continuous wave of lower and lower prices of real estate being sold, then that would drive the real estate market down in terms of the prices of the homes. Um, but but there's so much that would have to happen in order for that event to come into fruition. I don't think we're anywhere near that. So that is another thing to consider. Look at how many uh, new properties are being listed for sale. That would be a pre-indicator in terms of the direction of the market. So you want to look at whether you're a buyer or a seller. Look at how long these houses are sitting on the market. That's one big factor, also known as DOM, or days on market, DOM. But also look at the rate that new houses are being added to the market for sale, right? I don't know where I don't know where you can go to get that data, but if you work with a real estate agent, I'm pretty sure they could extract that information for you. But just kind of figure out, okay, on average in my zip code, or maybe if you wanted to get even more granular, in your zip code that you're looking to buy or sell, you might even get more granular and say, okay, in my zip code within this price range, what is the average number of houses that have been listed for sale in the last 30 days? And then ask that same question and say, in the last 60 days, in the last 6 months, in the last year, right? Just to get an average of how quickly homes have been historically added to the market, to see if there's a change. Because if you start seeing, if on average homes are being listed at a rate of 10 houses a week, okay, set your baseline. And then all of a sudden, if the average went from 10 houses a week to 20 or 30, as a seller, then you might be like, hey, yo, we're starting to see the market tick up in terms of houses hitting the market. That might be an indicator where you might say to yourself, all right, let me get out now before stuff gets nuts. Because you don't want to be on the market where, you go from competing against 50 other houses, and then all of a sudden it's like 400 houses for sale that are like yours, right? So the sweet spot is, if you're a seller, the sweet spot is probably where the market is approaching a balance between buyer and seller demand. And of course, the real sweet spot is slightly skewed to where there's just a little bit more buyers than there are sellers. But that's going to take threading the needle properly and being in tune with the market. So I think that, these factors, if you consider these factors, I think you'll be able to get the best deal possible when trying to sell your house. And if you're considering these factors, you'll be able to get the best deal possible as a buyer in this market. And if you're watching the trends properly, you'll know if now is a good time to buy in your area, and you'll also know if now is a good time to sell in your area. So anyway, just some thoughts that I had about this housing market crash and preparing for a potential housing market crash if you're looking to buy or sell a house. I'm going to drop more videos like this because I think it's very interesting just to watch things unfold, and things are unfolding on a daily basis. And there's so many factors that will have an effect and impact on housing prices, whether you're a buyer or a seller. So as these things unfold, I'll continue to share them with you guys. We've been talking a lot about preparation and survival, and this is part of the game. How do you prepare for a housing market crash? How do you prepare for a food shortage? How do you prepare for anything, any future event that's going to affect you and your family? You got to have a plan. So part of that plan is figuring out where you are, where things are now, where things were, and where things are likely to go based on the trend. And that's why it's so important to have historical data and facts to look at, so you can make an educated decision in terms of what should you do next. What you should do next should have a lot to do with what has happened already and where are you trying to go with you and your family. So once you understand the facts, you can take the panic out of decisions and make logical choices. So I really hope that you guys got some value out of this video. It's been fun. Drop me some comments. I'd love to know what you guys' goals are. And drop me some comments. If you made it this far, hit the like button. I appreciate that. Also subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys on the next one.